So explain the case in layman's terms for everybody. Explain where you believe there is grounds for the removal, or at least the beginning the recall of the governor.
Absolutely. So just for background, so that people know, there is an agency in our state called the Public Disclosure Commission, the PDC for short, and they are responsible for enforcing our state's campaign finance laws. So if there's a candidate or a political committee that isn't filing their reports on time, they're not showing how they're getting money, they're not showing how they're spending money, someone's going to file a complaint with the PDC. The PDC is going to come in, hopefully enforce the law, fine them, get them back on track, right?
And let me just 1 second. I ran for council, city council, and my campaign director, man, she was on me every single day. Have you filed? Have you filed? Have you filed? I said, okay, I'll get it in. She goes, no, before the 30 days. She said, you don't understand. If you're not filing, bang, right before that deadline, you're in some trouble. It felt like a rat trap. This thing would come right down on top of you if you hadn't filed. That PDC, they don't mess around, right? So just establishing when they're in place, you follow their rules.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And it's important, too. I mean, they have some nitpicky rules that they enforce. But if on a very basic level, we want to make sure that members of the public can access that information, right?
Yeah, okay.
So what the basis of my recall petition is that there is a statute that was part of the original initiative that was passed in the 1970s to create the PDC that says that whenever there's a vacancy on this 5-member Public Disclosure Commission, the governor has an obligation to appoint a successor within 30 days, right? And so that's a very important thing because the agency needs to have quorum, a bare minimum of a majority of members. It needs to have 3 members present in order to take official action. Now, if they can't take official action, what that means is, most critically, it means they can't do enforcement. So they can't penalize people or refer cases to the Attorney General's office when they're really breaking the rules and the public can't see their stuff, right? So the basis of my petition is that the governor has failed to appoint 2 replacements. In one instance, it's been over 400 days. In the other instance, it's been over 200 days past the deadline. And this is starting to have a really negative effect on how the agency operates going into the 2026 election cycle. So that's the legal basis for the petition.
Okay. Well, so the governor is in charge of appointing these 5. So you can assume that they are sympathetic to the governor. Did you hear back from the governor's office as to why they have not been appointed?
No, I have not heard from the governor's office at all. I did see that they were quoted in the Jerry Cornfield story as saying that they were, actively looking to replace the vacancies, but that's just not credible. I mean, it's been over a year in one instance, and there are people who have applied. They want to serve in this position, and the governor just isn't appointing anyone.
Well, okay, so let's play, political detective. So what's really behind leaving those 2 seats open? Speculate for me. You and I were having a beer. We were just talking. Why do you think he's leaving the seats open?
It's tough. It's tough. You'd think a governor with his new political power would want to get his own people in there.
Yes.
To make sure, to exercise his influence and for that reason. But so I have to say I'm at a little bit of a loss. I cannot understand why he would not want his state's campaign finance agency to function. And so I'm open to any conspiracy theories, but I personally have a really difficult time understanding why this is.
Well, I'm not much of a conspiracy theorist on this one. I just think and I appreciate you. Listen, if the law is there, apply the law and do it equally, which often the PDC doesn't seem to do, especially you look at certain cases, right? Going back to the Freedom Foundation case. To give somebody some idea of how this thing worked. So the Freedom Foundation didn't file something. I think it was what they get. I forget what it was. About $1,300 worth of stuff that they didn't report. And they get fined like $450,000, right? 3 unions that are working to stop the initiative process for citizens to be able to respond, they didn't report that they got legal advice, which cost $75,000. So the Freedom Foundation doesn't report like $1,300. Okay, bang. And I think they get whacked for, I don't know how much money, $80,000 or something like that. The union doesn't report $75,000, and they get a teeny tiny little fine, right? So they only $450 from each one of the unions. So it's like, you know what neighborhood you're in when you're dealing with Democrats and you happen to be Republican or conservative or libertarian. So in this case, The 2 seats being open, is it basically, hey, well, the cat's away, the mice will play? They're hoping for some mouse play? Is that what it is, Connor?
That's a very good question. I would be very interested to know what his logic is. But I refuse to believe that they've just been working on it diligently and haven't filled the slots.
Okay.
That is simply implausible.
Okay. So what happens? Let's say this thing goes forward. What's the next legal step? So you filed this thing. The governor's office has not responded to it. Let's say it keeps moving. What happens, attorney?
So Washington State has a very interesting recall process, and a lot of voters out there really don't understand it. So I'll break it down real quick.
Yeah.
When you believe that an elected official, either a statewide elected official, local elected official, whatever, has violated their oath of office, they've failed to discharge some responsibility that is within their purview, you can file a recall petition with the appropriate authority. In this case, it's the Secretary of State, because we're talking about a statewide elected. And you can break down in very basic, simple terms how this elected official failed to discharge their oath of office. Right?
Okay.
And once you do that, it sets up a 15-day timer where it goes to the Attorney General's office, and they have to go to Superior Court. Okay. And you, as the petitioner, also get to go to Superior Court, and the elected official also gets to go too. So there's a lot of parties there.
Uh-huh.
And the judge ultimately makes the decision whether or not the charges are sufficient to proceed. And if the judge agrees with you and says that they can proceed, then you have arguably an even bigger hurdle to clear, because you have to go out and get all these signatures. And in our state, it would be about 960,000 signatures in order to get the recall on the ballot. So yeah, pretty extreme.
Connor, I'm going to be like your mother here. Connor, can't you think of something else to do with your time? We sent you to law school. Your father and I worked for days trying to save up money to send you to law school, and this is what you're doing? I don't know why I've suddenly turned Jewish. I'm sorry. But listen, don't you have other cases? Is this a good use of your time?
It is. It is. And I'm really hoping here that the filing of this petition, I'm hoping genuinely that it doesn't even go to court. If he is willing to appoint the replacement commissioners to the 2 vacant positions, I'm happy to withdraw my petition. I'm disappointed that it had to get here.
Yeah.
But as long as he does the right thing eventually, I'm happy to withdraw this, because this is not a very sexy issue, as you've kind of alluded to. No one would have thought that this would be a basis for recalling the governor. It's a pretty standard thing for people to do. You have a vacant position, you appoint a replacement.
Okay.
And, for people who understand these rules, this is really not a huge investment of time.
Yeah.
But I thought it was worth it. And no one else was doing anything. The agency was begging the governor's office to appoint a replacement, and they were just getting the runaround.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that this will lead to some change.
I get it, right? Because now they get the ball rolling. You light the fire under his feet, and now they have to respond to you. And then, we plan on having, and what you want to do is get him on record to be able to say, we will have that position filled within the next 2 weeks. We apologize for the delay of the whole thing. As long as I have you on, and you really are a guy that's deep into all this politics stuff. If Brian Harewood were listening to you, of course, from Let's Go Washington, how would you handle something like the referendum that is now looks like it is going to go to court, and the Washington State Supreme Court will rule whether or not it's okay to have that emergency clause on there? Do you have any thoughts on that thing? And I realize that we're getting advice from an attorney, so I'll need to pay you so that we don't end up with a PDC or something. What do you think?
Well, I think first off that they really did the right thing pursuing this issue. I think a lot of people, if they didn't have the resources, if they didn't have the time, they would have just said, okay, they're not letting us do a referendum, let's do an initiative instead, or let's just do nothing. So I really applaud them for taking this case to the Supreme Court. It's a really big issue. I mean, the legislature has just been increasingly slapping these emergency clauses on these bills to make them referendum proof, to try to make them so that the voters can't weigh in on them.
Yeah.
And that is just so wrong, especially when it really isn't an emergency. And I mean, look, it's not an emergency. The people have a right in this state to vote on these things, and the legislature tried to take that right away, and that's wrong. And I'm hoping that the Supreme Court will agree with Brian Harewood and Let's Go Washington, because that's, it's an important thing in a representative democracy. We want people to have that right to vote on these things.
And the reason they want to do with a referendum, Connor Edwards, is because you need less signatures for the referendum than the initiative, correct?
That's correct. And it is a massive financial obligation to pay out for signature gatherers. I mean, that's really the only way you can do it. You just simply cannot do it with volunteers. It's unrealistic. They can help you. so that you don't have to pay quite as much. But if you're going to qualify any of these efforts, you have to pay professionals. And with the referendum, I believe it's about half as many signatures as you need to get.
Plus, you have to have them all in by June 10th. Yes, Joe.
We did get a text earlier from Bob Stevens, who sent Jamie Peterson an email challenging him on the emergency status of the income tax. I didn't get the actual question from Bob, but I did get the answer that Jamie replied with.
Okay, here we go.
He said, "We did not declare an emergency. Article 2, Section 1 of the state constitution says that the referendum power is not available for bills that are necessary, quotes, for support of the state government and its existing institutions. End quote. The Constitution also requires us to balance the budget over the current and next biennium. The 4-year balanced budget requirement is a source of great pride for the state, in parentheses, end quotes, strongest in the country. The budget that we enacted this year balances the next biennium only because of revenue from the millionaire's tax. As a result, whether we said so in the bill or not, it is not subject to referendum. It is subject to initiative, and I assume that it will be on the ballot this fall. Can there really be any doubt that Brian Haywood, who gathered 400,000 signatures on an initiative regarding natural gas, could do the same for an initiative to repeal the income tax? So people will get to vote. Best wishes, Jamie."
Mm-hmm. I did. So I thought they put the emergency on there because he stated in his case to the Supreme Court that the entire quote as to this needs to be in place in order for the safety and the public and all the rest of the blah 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 for the state of Washington. I thought it was on there, but
it is. He's basically saying in legalese, like, yeah, it's not an emergency. It's whatever they called it, like I can't remember.
Necessary to
exactly
to run.
Necessary for governance.
Right. So the problem is that I looked it up. Only 7 times has the Washington State Supreme Court ever said, that slapping that emergency thing on there, that's not going to hold on those. Most of the time, they say they leave broad discretion to legislators.
Yeah, and then that distinction that Senator Peterson brought up, I mean, that's sort of a semantic distinction. The effect is exactly the same as if it were an emergency clause. But, regardless, even if, the Secretary of State, it's more of a technical issue, but the Secretary of State should have at least allowed the referendum to proceed to the point where it could get assigned a number and a title. And the fact that he refused to do that, I mean, they are starving them of the days that they have to go out and get signatures. And the more days you can starve the people that would try to do the referendum, the less likely it is that the referendum actually gets to go onto the ballot. So,
yeah, well, starving and stopping. It's an
important issue.
Yeah, starving and stopping is how you fight for democracy in the state of Washington. It's a weird battle. Well, listen, I wish you the best of luck. If nothing else, Connor Edwards, I assume that you just hope that this tells the folks in Olympia, hey, we are watching. You have a vacancy. The law says you must fill it. So fill it. That's
Absolutely.
It. Okay. You get any other cases out there pending? Huh? Make
your
parents proud.
100 PDC complaints every year that are still pending. So, and I got a bunch of other cases for my real job as a lawyer that are pending too.
I got it.
He is a prodigious filer of campaign finance complaints.
Yes, the PDC. It's really wild. And by the way, as a citizen, you can go on the PDC site. You can put in anybody who's running for office. You can see where they spend their money, how much money has come in. It's really kind of nice to look at. And then it breaks it all down, shows you, okay, you got all this from private. And then it lists every single person that gave you $50 or $25. You can see all their names on there. And then you can see this spent this much on marketing, this much on consulting. And every 30 days, they have to have it clearly stated how much money is coming in and how much money is going out. And you really want to see, who controls what? Go on there when you break it down, right, Connor? You can see, there's the unions. $7.5 million. I wonder what they get for all that. Well, listen, I'll let you get back to work. Thanks for spending some overtime with us and some billable hours. Thank you, Connor Edwards. Appreciate it.